Hey, everybody, welcome back to the End of Mind podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin. Super excited to introduce you all to Brian. Thanks so much for being here today.
I'm honored to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, we can't wait to get to know you a little bit more, Brian. So, can you just tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, in a nutshell, Midwest kid that just kept moving west. Spent about a decade in California, 1 year totally around the world where I lived out of a suitcase, and then ended up in Oahu, Hawaii, where I've been here for going on 9 years now. Married for 12 years, father of two kids. One we fostered and adopted, so foster care is a big thing for me. And I've been an entrepreneur for 11 years now. And from my understanding, the show hits on a lot of like the early stage entrepreneurship journey. So I've gone 0 to 4 million in three different companies. So a lot of lessons and failures there. Also, a lot of companies that I don't talk a lot about that also failed pretty hard. So excited to share whatever I can do to be helpful to your audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love to hear more about your journey and traveling for a year. Sounds amazing. We've like planted our roots here and we have yet to really leave, you know?
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
from outside of Philly. So I'm sure the weather is hopefully much better in Hawaii today. I'd love to know more. One of our actually top performing episodes was when a lady came on and she shared about her business going bankrupt, and it was actually a
Uh,
donut shop. And everybody was just so intrigued by this story. So I
yeah.
hate to start off by asking you about maybe the not so success stories, but I find that they honestly help us all understand what it really takes to become an entrepreneur and what can happen that a lot of people don't tell us.
Yeah, yeah. So, plenty of those, don't worry. Um, so maybe like a couple that I can get into. Um, so I started my first like real entrepreneurship journey, um, what I call like easy mode and hard mode. So I actually raised money, which is unusual for a very first business, unless you're in like San Francisco and you're around all the tech startup stuff. So I raised about $2 million, which sounds like a ton of money, and it was. Um, so when you have capital, you can allocate that, even make some bad decisions, try some things, run experiments, right? And at the same time, I was actually lived in Argentina to try to get this business off the ground. So I was doing that on hard mode. If anybody's ever looked at the list of like easiest countries to do business on, you'll see like Singapore and Dubai and countries like that. And you've got to scroll way down and keep scrolling and keep scrolling. And then you get to Argentina, which is about 150th or so in the world in ease of doing business. Just super ambiguous, like hard to figure out. By the grace of God, you just kind of pray that all your stuff, goes through. So anyway, fast forward, um, we start hiring salespeople. Now, I didn't grow up in like the sales seat, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs can probably relate to this. We've got our superpower. You brought up the donut shop, so maybe there's people that are bakers, right? And that's what drew them to entrepreneurship. Or they're really good with numbers, so they open up a CPA shop, or they're lawyers or doctors or whatever, like, and we kind of forget that these are all entrepreneurs too. These are small business owners, plumbers, electricians. So my superpower was recruiting, and I ran recruiting for a bunch of tech startups and did really well there. But I didn't have this like sales confidence that I could just go out and be a rainmaker and drive all this business. So raising capital was when I look back at it, it was like a crutch that I used because
Okay.
I hired two really expensive salespeople to just like, hey, go out, like, let's make some money. and it wasn't nearly as successful as I thought. In fact, I mean, I probably could have just lit the money on fire, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize till later, Caitlin, is that because I was the founder of the business, number one, I had to learn how to sell. And number two, this is where like people don't really understand it. When you're the founder, people give you so much grace because they just want to talk to somebody who they know is like the owner, they're passionate, they care way more about this than anybody else. They've got it all in their head. So if you say the wrong thing or butcher it or like mess up on your pitch, they give no grace to the hired gun salesperson, but they give all the grace to you as the founder. So I think that's like really important. And it took me, a year or two to understand that. And then ever since, I've just been like the face selling. I butcher stuff all the time. 10 years later, I still mess up, say the wrong thing. But people don't seem to mind because they know that I like care about the domain more than anybody else, right? And they see me as the owner. I've got a lot more stories, but I can stop there if you want to.
Oh my gosh, this is so great. I'm sure we'll continue on with your next piece of the stories too, because I'm so honestly very intrigued by your story. And I love that tip that you gave us, like meeting myself and the listeners. I've never heard anybody really talk about what it's like to be selling yourself or a product that you've developed versus telling someone else how to sell it. I
Yeah,
remember when I worked for a small family owned nonprofit, finding the words for what they were providing was like a completely different language, right? Than when they were in the room and getting people to fundraise for them. Like they're just talking about their brother, right? It's the easiest thing. But
yeah,
for me, I'm like, I have no relation to this person. I know nothing really about fundraising or nonprofits at the time. I was so green.
right.
Um, and you obviously had expertise, right? In explaining what you were doing because you were able to capitally gain $2 million. How did that kind of change in your head? Like when you were going and getting donors, it sounds like that was almost a different experience for you than when you were selling your service actively to potential clients.
Yeah, so I got about 2 million in investment, and I think a lot had to do with I never really raised money before, by the way, and
Wow.
so I was kind of green at this, but I was so determined, right? And if I had to, I mean, I wasn't a finance guy, but I had to learn how to do discounted cash flow analysis kind of on the fly as I come up with my valuations. And I wasn't a marketing person, but I had to come up with a go-to-market strategy and positioning. So that's something, I'll also share for those that have maybe read like Rich Dad Poor Dad, my all-time famous book, but the sequel is actually my favorite, which is called Cash Flow Quadrant, which not as many people have read. And you're not in your head, so maybe have you read this
I've
one?
heard it. Yeah, I've heard
Okay.
about it. I haven't read it
Okay.
yet, but
Yeah.
I have started Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm an
Okay.
audiobook gal,
Okay.
hence the
Yeah.
podcast.
So what's important about this book, if you were just to take like a tweet about the book, is there's really four quadrants. There's the employee quadrant, the self-employed quadrant, like doctors, lawyers, plumbers, the business owner quadrant. So now you've got employees, and then there's the investor quadrant. So I've spent time in all four. And when you're in that business owner quadrant, um, and now like as an investor invested in business owners myself, there's nothing like finding somebody who is just so determined no matter what, they're going to make it work. And I know it's a little bit of cliche advice, like don't give up, never give up. But if there's any universal truth about being an entrepreneur, you are going to get punched in the face like 1,000 times, and you just have to keep going. And sometimes you just need to hear this because the anecdote that I have that's related is so my son is 6, going on 7.
Yay.
And when my wife was just about to deliver, so this goes back, like a few years, but I remember talking to some of my friends, and like you hear on, like you read on social media and everything, like, when your kids are born, it's like the greatest thing ever. And of course it is. But that's like I was only hearing about like the magic. And then I had one of my oldest buddies, we were talking on the phone like a few weeks before birth, and he's like, he calls me by my last name all the time, like Samson, like so you got to know, um it's like crazy hard, insane. You're not getting any sleep. You're gonna like your life is gonna be miserable for a while. And people only talk about the good stuff. So I'm telling you this because when you have these like horrible days, you're gonna know that it's normal. Like
Yeah.
if you are expecting it, you you just kind of shrug your shoulders like, okay, like I knew this was coming, versus you kind of build it all up in your head and then you get hit and you're like, well, wait, what's wrong here? No, this is normal. This is what should happen. So I think entrepreneurship is the same way. And by now I've been punched 10,000 times. So you just kind of keep getting stronger, you keep getting off the mat. You realize your self-confidence is enormous now because you can overcome anything, right?
Yeah.
Um, I've had customers that owed me $250,000, and we had to get into like litigation, to
Yeah.
get it collected. I've had all my revenue disappear overnight due to COVID. Um, I've had businesses just totally fizzle, it's just kind of part of the game.
Yeah.
So you you've just got to like know to expect it, and you're mentally ready for it. So when you get hit, you're like, okay, I knew that was coming.
Yeah, yeah, almost like you can foresee it. Like I've talked about, I love your analogy of being a father too. My best friends just had a baby 4 months ago. So I can relate from that
Yeah.
from afar. Um, but also what you're sharing in conjunction with that same feeling of round, like what is coming next. And I think so many of us, including myself, struggle with that unknown, and a lot of the times I see, like in my one on one coaching for marketing, that's the biggest hurdle is them not knowing what if the business fails? Like, what do I do when I have no revenue? I mean, I was in business pre COVID too. The exact same thing happened to me. And I was like, okay, like I just bought my house and now I have to keep, making the payments. And it really showed me like how resourceful I could be in those moments. But I can also understand where that would be so scary for some people that they may not continue in entrepreneurship. What did you tell yourself in those moments, or how did you maybe like prepare for knowing that the next wave was coming, or, something could happen to the company?
Yeah, I think the topic we're really hitting on is like anxiety and stoicism,
Yes.
And I don't think I really call myself an anxious person, but and hopefully I'm not out of line here, but I think like more women, in the show is kind of designed for women. I think women are much more comfortable talking about their feelings and like
Yeah.
I'm feeling anxious, where men might feel anxious, but you'll never know, right?
Yes.
Like I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling this way. So I think when you're broadcasting your feelings, um, the upside is like you're much more mentally healthy than like someone like me that never talks about it. But I think the downside is sometimes like by talking about it all the time,
Yes.
you can't get out of this anxiety, right? And you're just thinking about it all the time. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's like all uncertainty. And it's really um like I think you can be anxious, but there's also something special about being stoic as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and betting on yourself and just like enduring pain, expecting the pain, enduring the pain, and realizing that all of this is compounding. So just like an investment that compounds over time, like it's the eighth wonder of the world, as Benjamin Franklin used to say, I
Yeah.
think entrepreneurship skill set compounds. So the pain you feel today makes you this much stronger tomorrow, and you're ready for anything related to that event. So I guess I'm trying to get to um, it's okay to feel anxious, but realize that you got to get out of that quickly into fix it mode instead of wallowing mode.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's great advice. I was actually just going through a pivot pretty heavily in my company, and I share about this on the show. Like, I run a social media management agency that I own and have owned for, you know, a long time now, almost 7 years. So I have that company, but obviously things changed drastically. And I was really unhappy with working on 17 marketing plans at once, for all different companies. And I pivoted into a fractional CMO role.
Yeah.
And I love working with one company, like majority of the time, right? I still have my agency, but my team runs that. So I can just focus on this one company. It's so much more rewarding. And I
Mm.
find that in exactly what you're describing, even though we feel anxiety, we know the pivot's coming, we know that the change is happening. I was on with a client earlier. She's like, I know that this is happening for a reason. The more you lean into that, the more information you gain. Like, I would never be able to be a fractional chief marketing officer if I didn't, right? Like, coach and mentor all of these marketing companies for so many years now that I know what to do if XYZ comes up. You're just so much more resourceful, like you said. Leaning and hoping and just betting on yourself is the best thing that you can do, because you always come back to that, even if
Mm.
feeling emotionally unstable, but try not to be in it for too long. It's really great advice. So, can you tell us a little bit more about like the array of businesses? You mentioned tech recruitment. Have you worked in several other industries? I find that's another big limiting belief for a lot of our listeners. Like, they might be in therapy, like conventional therapy, but they want to pivot their practice to more like spiritual, or they're ready to just expand, maybe coaching, and they're not sure how, to make that jump.
Yeah, so I think there's uh, something really awesome that happens when you're an entrepreneur for a while, but then we all have to learn like our hubris too. So I'll explain with my story. In During COVID is when I was on my second business, and the overall end result was pretty exciting. I used $2,000 of my own money. So this is coming out of raising 2 million. Now I'm just bootstrapping, use $2,000, and that one in a few years was doing $4 million in revenue, right? With like really, really great margins. But I had to endure COVID during it. And as a young father, scared me because how am I gonna feed my family, pay my mortgage, all this stuff with no revenue coming in? So I had this kind of hubris of, well, like I can make anything work. I know I'm an entrepreneur. So uh, I'm far from the best dressed guy in the neighborhood. But I thought, hey, maybe I'll Shopify seems to be a thing in 2020. So I'll create my own little Shopify store and sell men's clothing, which like totally failed, like it had no right to be successful because I'm like, what do I know about Instagram and drop shipping? And I'm trying to like learn it and total failure. Uh, but I've also that other business took off. That was recruiting teams. So similar to like your kind of fractional work, we would do project teams for venture funded tech companies that needed to do a hiring burst. And this is a very common thing. Tech company raises $20 million. They need to hire 30 engineers in the next 6 months. So that means you don't need recruiters forever. You need them for 6 months of like insane burst. And I realized that a lot of companies were going through this at one time. And as one company is not hiring, another company is, and you move your team. So we grew that to about 60 recruiters that were working across like 20 given clients at any given time. That worked really well. And then I also started a nearshore business that I have today called Plug. And we've got about 100 billable engineers that we are based in Latin America that we bill out to US companies. Um, so that's kind of all related to like the staffing type of world, just a little bit different staffing. What's nice about this business is it's all recurring revenue. So every month over month over month, and that can create like a real company that has value because the revenues are predictable. And if you ever want to sell your company like an asset, people want to buy future cash flows. They're not paying for the past, they're paying for the future. Um, but the downside of that is I kind of become like a bank now. So, as I
Right.
get paid on net 30, I'm floating all this expenses until I get paid, and people don't always think about that. So you need a lot of cash to do it. Um, and then as I've kind of moved from business owner to now investor, so I live in Hawaii and I've invested in a cleaning company,
Cool. We
a
love
lot,
cleaning companies on
yeah,
this show. Yeah.
yeah, and a locksmith company.
Cool.
And then, I'm always on the hunt for another deal. So it could be junk hauling, could be an electrician. So I like this home services world because it's easy to understand. Um, you don't need nearly as much money as you think. Um, and so many of them, like I'd argue, at least in Hawaii, 95% don't have a website or can't do digital payments. Like people are still writing physical checks. I don't even know what that is anymore. Uh, and there's no Yelp or anything. So all you have to do is just do just a little bit to be in that top 5%. So that's kind of where my eyes at. Meanwhile, I've got these other businesses and an AI company, we just launched this year. So there's a lot of like for me now, everything is an opportunity and you just see everything as a leverage. So what do I need here? Do I need capital? Do I need people? Do I need operational expertise? And um, what is going to be my ROI on this capital or like my time invested? So I'm really enjoying my time in the Kiyosaki, I quadrant, the investor quadrant, because I have a lot of free space in my day now and a lot of free time. And as you can probably tell, your audience can probably tell, like I like to jump between a lot of different things
Yeah.
because the different problem spaces, the different context, that's really interesting to me. And I think if I was just on like one business, I would probably drive everybody crazy because
Yeah.
I have too many ideas and it would just it wouldn't be good for the team.
I totally get it. I'm honestly really am the same way. And that's why I kept my agency because I knew like I need to have that outlet, right? For like collecting more. And I just admire your story so much from, what you were able to build, the businesses that you've even explored in and haven't come to fruition, but you've always kept on the track. And now you're at like, at least many listeners may not have this goal, but that's my goal as well, is to be an investor, to have several, rental properties, like just so many different industries that I invest in, basically diversifying assets, right? For
Yeah, yeah,
listeners that aren't familiar with investing, like that's what Brian's describing. He's investing in all different types of industries and he's allowing his wealth to build over time. And it allows you to also, as business owners that have lived through COVID, not depend on one stream of income ever again because
yeah,
we lived through it, right? So, like, we know what it takes to
100%.
survive through a really big change in the market, like overnight, literally. So, I just admire your journey so much. And thank you so much for sharing with us. And the way that you look at business is very like logical and more critical thinking. And I
Mm,
think so many people forget that part of entrepreneurship, that they
yeah,
end up losing themselves, in the emotion, which I have empathy for too, because I think that we're all human and it takes
yeah,
time to build, right?
totally. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. So I'd love to learn more about where you're going next. If this investing is, you mentioned a few of the companies that you're looking for. Are you looking to stay more local with some of your investments in Hawaii? And how do you find these companies? Actually, the company that I'm working with was also on paper and pen, like for all of their leads just after as of a few months ago. So they're like very new to the tech world, but a lot of our listeners may also benefit from this because we're in the online space. Like to us, tech is so natural, but there's so many businesses that have been around for so many years that have no clue like what any of us are talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I had in my um nearshore Latin America business, and I always kind of knew this, but the light bulb hit a few years ago, is I've got this ultimate talent leverage machine, where it's a lot less expensive and I've got a good name down there because I've been in Latin America for 11 years. I live there. I understand it. People know me. I've got credibility. Um, so either I need a marketing person or I need a AI person or an operations person or a recruiter or a software engineer. I can lean on this group of people in my time zone at a lower cost. And then I've got this AI company launched this year that's building workflows and creating automation. So you've got labor leverage, operational leverage with AI. And then I've got capital built up over, I'm older now. So, I've rental properties, all the stuff, like all these assets that I can leverage in terms of capital. And then I have a reasonably big enough business that's generating predictable cash. So, kind of all this to say, now I can be more discerning with the deals that I look at. And ideally, I can use, and also have my wisdom. So call that like the fourth area. So wisdom, real money to help a company, nearshore labor leverage, and then AI efficiencies. So if I can find a business that um, maybe has zero of those, like they're kind of hand to mouth, but like a gritty, scrappy, strong entrepreneur that, like we talked about, the baker, maybe they're amazing at making donuts, or a cleaning person that's like amazing reputation, but hand to mouth, couldn't take on a property manager as a client because they're doing net 30. Um, doesn't have anybody in the labor seat to run the back office. Isn't taking advantage of digital world or AI or efficiencies. Could use some help on strategy. So like all these different things. So ideally, I find a business that has 0 out of 4, So I can bring these four things to the table and create like immediate lift on the valuation. And all of a sudden now I own a piece of a really fast growing asset.
Yeah.
Um, and I also get cash flow distributions along the way. And really doesn't take me that much time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Compared to like what you've lived through, right? And I'm
Yeah,
sure many
yeah.
of the sleepless nights too.
Oh, totally.
Like
Yeah.
when you do entrepreneurship, even when you're not working, you're constantly working. The business owner
True.
that I work with right now, like internally, he was just telling us all of his ideas. And he's like, this is all I think about. I'm like, that's how we are. It's
Yeah.
in your blood. Like you eat, breathe, sleep, this mentality. So thank you so much again for sharing with us. Is there any other pieces of advice that you'd like to give our listeners before you tell us how we can stay in touch and hear more about your upcoming
Yeah.
adventures?
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I've hit on it a couple times in this, but I think whether you read Cash Flow Quadrant or not, kind of recognizing like where you are in that cycle of employee all the way through investor. But I would also say try not to rush it. Like, I think so often we might look on Instagram or something and see, wow, like this person's killing it, but have no idea the heartache and headaches they had to go through. You kind of need to go through the reps at each stage, before you keep progressing. And that's okay. Like, if it takes you a decade to go through the four, that's perfectly fine and normal. If you try to do it in a year, like you're kind of a half-baked investor and you just need the reps. So don't be afraid to get the reps.
That's really such good advice and good for me to hear too. I turned 30 this year, and like when you turn 30 and you know that you're going to be an entrepreneur when you're like 23, you have all these expectations, right? You think you'll have the 10 houses and you'll be like running the real estate investment company. And I'm like, no, that's like so far from where I'm at right now. And I just got married. So it's a nice reminder to know. And I love what you mentioned about compounding. Like once you kind of hit your sweet spot in business, it sounds like you've been able to really just roll that into like the next thing and keep it going. And you seem so happy and so relaxed. Like for our listeners that aren't watching this physically, I think that you should go watch it on YouTube because your energy is like very calming, which is so
Oh,
great to see.
thanks. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's great. Well, thanks so much, Brian. It was so great to meet you. How can we stay in touch, follow along? Aren't you big on LinkedIn or am I totally making that up?
Uh, big is a subjective thing, but I'm active on LinkedIn.
Good.
So,
Yay.
but probably, out of all the companies, probably the easiest way to get a hold of me is through Plug Technologies. So the website is plugg.tech, and if you go to the contact us page, I'll eventually get that. So happy to chat with anybody.
Good. Perfect. And we'll leave all the links in the show notes below for our multitasking listeners. You can always DM me. I will connect you personally with Brian and Plug and get you that link if you have any questions. So thanks so much again for being here. This was awesome.
My pleasure.